Thanks for staying with us here on TVC Breakfast. Now, asset recovery plays a pivotal role in addressing illicit financial flows. It involves the identification, tracing, freezing, and repatriation of stolen or illicitly acquired assets. Now, the process is complex and can span across multiple jurisdictions, as the stolen funds are often transferred and hidden in foreign banks, real estate. Effective asset recovery mechanisms can help return these resources to the countries of origin, providing a much-needed boost to national economies and helping to restore public trust in governance. Joining us for this conversation is the Executive Director, Africa Network for Environment and Economic Justice, David Ogolo. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ogolo. Tackling illicit fund in Nigeria, is such a hot-button issue right now, especially with the prevailing economic, circumstances. But if you look at it historically, since the 1980s, Sub-Saharan Africa is said to have lost about $1.3 trillion, which has vanished through illicit channels, and Nigeria alone has lost over $40 billion in 2021 and 2010 alone. So the question for you there is, what specific steps do you see as game changer for reclaiming the lost revenue so far?
Thank you very much. First, thanks for inviting me to contribute to this very important issue that our country needs to step up policy response and dealing with this challenge. And I'm happy that we have put in place, the government has put in place law which provides a kind of a national anti-corruption architecture that helps deal with the challenge of illicit financial flow in Nigeria. And I refer this to the Proceeds of Crime Act, which provides the legal and institutional framework for the anti-corruption entities like EFCC, ICPC, NDLA, NATIP, and others who are also mentioned in the Proceeds of Crime Act that are working very vigorously to see that the issue of illicit financial flow is tackled in Nigeria. And the enforcement of this act is something that we see very important if we are to end the bleeding of the country. When I say bleeding, a situation where you found over 18 billion, according to the Global Financial Integrity and UNCTAD, that leaves the country annually. When you compare this to what Nigerian government is investing in health and education combined together, you can imagine the implication for the country. And that's why every stakeholders, including government, private sector, civil society, the community, we all need to work together to end this challenge, which is not just a problem to Nigeria, but is a problem to the entire African continent. As you know, when the Mbeki report came out, it was also identified that over $50 billion also leave the continent. And when you now zero it down to Nigeria, seeing that over 18 billion, you see that Nigeria is a major country that is afflicted with this problem of illicit financial flow. And so the major driver for these, they all come from trade misinvoicing and tax evasion, criminal acts like trying to underreport export values just to make profit, shipping the profit away from the country through illegal means, trying not to follow the regulatory processes, lack of cooperations for foreign countries. Sometimes when mutual legal assistance are requested, the responses are delayed. So some of this problem is not squarely just the country. We need to also look beyond Nigeria, because most time when this money leaves the country, it goes to other jurisdictions. So you need some cooperations from other countries. And so I would say that the Proceeds of Crime Act is alive in Nigeria. Yeah. It's in compliance with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, and it's also comply with some of the standards that is reflected in the Financial Action Task Force document. And for me, Nigeria is doing well. Like you know, yeah. Nigeria is still in the FATF green list, which make it very difficult for the country to access some cheap capital. And this, again, undermines potential for development. And because of this, most of the banks in Nigeria are not able to get a corresponding bank to sustain their operation, and this is not very good for business. And
all right,
it indirectly also affect the potential for economic growth in the country.
All right, Mr. David, let me come in here. Thank you for joining us. Good morning to you once again. Oftentimes, we hear a lot of stories that, oh, this person has stolen a lot of money and he has hidden it under a fake name somewhere, you know, out of the country. But I want to speak about the challenges we face and how we can rectify it. Sometimes we hear that this money has come back. Actually, we hear that the monies have come back. They've been able to recover the money. But after that, we just hear about it and we don't hear anything again. So these monies that are being able to get back to the country, how do we follow through with accountability to make sure that they are used for the betterment of Nigeria? Because if you ask me, it's not all about just getting these funds back. What are these funds being used for?
Okay, thank you. This is a very important question because essentially, as we try to, like EFCC, ICPC, most of these organizations are working very hard to get some of this money back to the country. And when the money eventually returns back to the country, it is also very important that the money is used judiciously. And if you look into the Proceeds of Crime Act, there are all regulations there that specify very clearly how such money, when it returns back to the country, how it is put in the central bank account and how it will be used. And one example is the Abacha Thu, which is the $325 million that was returned back to the country, which our organization, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, participated in monitoring, which led to the Mantra report, the Monitoring Recovered Asset Through Transparency and Accountability. The money was used for cash transfer program in Nigeria, and most poor Nigerians benefited from that cash transfer program. And I can tell you that over 1 to 2 million Nigerians who benefited from this cash transfer program as a result of this money that came from the Abacha's recovered asset. Then we also have the Abacha 3, which was also the money recovered, millions of dollars, which was also used for major infrastructural projects across the country. I mean the Lagos-Ibadan Road, we have the Niger Bridge, and we have the Abuja-Kanu Road. These projects were all supported by this recovered asset. So, and then we have also seen situations where EFCC have also, in a press briefing, disclosed some of the recovered assets returned to the owners. And so, for me, this is a very good case of crime must not pay. The most recent case is the former central bank governor, which the EFCC recovered, some of those houses that was recovered. That is an excellent example of how the anti-corruption entities are working within the Proceeds of Crime Act to ensure that these all illicit financial flow challenges are also tackled. The same thing applies to the extractive sector, because the mining sector is also faced with the challenge of illicit financial flow. And one of the things we're trying to do now to unpack with our new project we're currently implementing with support from the FCDO, the UK government, is to see how we carry out a study to unpack how the illicit financial flow manifests in the mining sector. As you know, the mining sector contributes to the country GDP, almost about 5%, and there is need for us to protect, to scale this up. And the only way to do this is to ensure that the criminal act that happens in that sector is reduced to the minimum. Because most of the exports that are happening in the mining sector, they under-report, and this make it impossible for the tax collectors to collect the required resources that would have been used for development. And that's the reason why we think that this whole idea that whether Proceeds of Crime Act is working or not is not an issue at all, because in the country we are we have seen how EFCC, ICPC, NDLA, they are all working vigorously, but there are challenges. Those challenges require political will from the leadership of the country. And then secondly, we need an institutional support for this institution. And then thirdly, we need the finance to strengthen the workforce of those organizations so that they can be able to carry out their function as spelled out in the Proceeds of Crime Act, which provides the national asset recovery architecture for the country. And leveraging on that legal framework, I think institutions like EFCC and ICPC will be able to help the country to recover assets and use those assets, manage them very well, and use them to achieve development for the country.
Right. So, drawing from the recent national conference on illicit financial flows in Abuja, which was held, I think, a month ago, where Dr. Zacchaeus Adedeji from FRS, highlighted how these flows rob Nigeria of funds of infrastructure, healthcare, and and what have you. But here is the caveat. Experts or critics are saying, yes, you're bringing up different strategies, collaborating with the EFCC, the ICPC, customs, FRS, etc., in order to tackle these financial flows. And yet we are looking for investors. Fine, some people who have stolen money are investing in real estate, etc. How do you think this will not jeopardize our drive, as we have the president outside of the country, wooing investors? How do you think this will not jeopardize our drive to bring in investors who will now be thinking, okay, if I'm going to be coming here, I want to make money and I have to take money back to my country. Won't they think that, I'm also involved in these illicit financial flows across countries?
No, not at all. There are legal ways. Like, just to give a little basic definition of illicit financial flow. When you take money out of the country through unethical process, illegally, that is what we're referring to. But if you are a genuine businessman and you run a genuine business and you want to export your profit, there is a legal way of doing it, and you take a legal route, and the country, as a matter of fact, is creating an enabling environment for that to happen. What we are talking here is illicit financial flow, illegal financial flow, unethical financial flow, particularly the black economy. Most of these business, we call them the black economy because they don't follow the legal processes, and it is a criminal act. Like, take for example the mining sector. Most of the artisanal mining that is happening in the country, they don't disclose the identity of the owner, and that's why some of the things that we are raising around to ensure transparency and accountability in the mining sector is to call for beneficial ownership, so that we know those who own those entities. But if you are a foreign investor, you are coming into the country, you need to you register with the Corporate Affairs Commission. And in that way, the identity of the ownership of that entity will be known to the authority. And when you are trying to transfer your profit back, you have to follow the legal process. And in that process, organizations like NFIU, the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, will be able to know about what you are disclosing and what you are exporting out of the country. That is not what we're referring to. And companies who are willing to do genuine business, there are regulatory framework they need to follow. And that will not constrain them not exporting their profit out of the country. But what we are essentially looking at when we refer to these $15 to $18 billion that is illicitly taken out of the country, that need to be separated from genuine businessmen who comes into the country to do business. For example, businessmen who also underreport their export, just to make sure that they shift the profit. Those are the criminal actors that we are referring to here. And those kind of actors are what EFCC is looking for, not the genuine businessmen. So I think it is in the interest of these genuine businessmen that we almost join forces together to tackle the challenge of illicit financial flow in Nigeria. Because what the illicit financial flow is doing to the economy is stealing the future of this country. It's taking resources that are supposed to be used for major infrastructure. It's taking the resources that we're supposed to use to build hospital, to build health center, to build infrastructure, to ensure that there is economic growth, prosperity for our country. But because of the activity of these characters, we are denied of this prosperity. And that's why all hands must be on deck, because it's also another way of also sending out potential foreign investor. Like I mentioned earlier on, Nigeria is currently on the FATF green list. And the implication of that is that Nigeria is seen as a country which financial system is not clean because of the activity of these characters who are involved in this illicit financial flow activities in the country. And so it's our challenge for everybody to work together to see that we end and block this illicit financial flow out of the country, because it is not doing the country any good.
Yes.
It is denying the country the resources that we need to drive the development of this country. Is denying the country the image that we need that will attract foreign investors into the country. If we are to leave the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force green list, then we must put in place a system that will send the right signal to potential investors that are willing to bring in capital into the country to invest. It's only then we will guarantee economic growth. And without economic growth, you can't talk about tackling the poverty challenge that we are facing in the country. And that same tied to the whole overall policy of the current government of trying to see how they will deal with the challenge of poverty through social protection and other policies that will help tackle the challenge of poverty in the country.
I would like us to take a look at interagency cooperation when it comes to trying to tackle this issue we're discussing. It has been noticed that each organization would prefer a situation where they get credit for things like this. So that has been giving some issues as far as interagency cooperation is concerned. I would like you to look at that a little bit. And another is the mining sector seems to be one of the conduits where so much Nigerian money leaves Nigeria illegally. Why is it so difficult to curb it?
So, okay, thank you. The first question you talk about, the interagency cooperation, this is a major issue. And as a matter of fact, before the proceeding of crime framework was put in place, this has been a big challenge. And I'm happy that the Ministry of Justice is taking steps through the regulation on Proceeding of Crime Act to bring some level of interagency cooperation. And we have also seen the federal government through TUGA. They are also coordinating all the agency. So, and through this recent government conference on asset recovery, we have also seen the commitment of all the anti-corruption agencies trying to work together to see that this interagency cooperation is achieved, because no one single anti-corruption entity can fight the illicit financial flow problem. You need the cooperation of every agency. Take, for instance, the EFCC need the cooperation of custom to be able to know, investigate crime that have talked about commercial shifting of profit. The EFCC and ICPC need the cooperation of the Federal Inland Revenue Services to know those who are trying to dodge a tax evasion, to be able to prosecute them for the money to be recovered. And at the same time, the EFCC also need an ICPC and other anti-corruption entity mentioned in the Proceeding of Crime Act, like NAPTIP, that are involved in human trafficking and migration issues. They need the cooperation of NFIU, the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, because through there they monitored suspicious transactions, or financial transactions that look suspicious. They raise the red light. And through those kind of reports, other entities can be able to carry out research. And then even the Corporate Affairs Commission, through their beneficial ownership register, anti-corruption entity will be able to know who are the owners. Who are the owners? For example, if you go to the real estate sector, for example, looked across Abuja, who are the owners of these buildings in Abuja? And there you can talk about the issue of unexplained wealth order. People have wealth, but what is their source of income? You can't see correlation. And this is a big challenge, and that's why first we must commend the EFCC chairman. Recently came out very strongly on recent moving of money into the real estate sector in Nigeria. And that way they are trying to clean up the source of the illicit nature of their fund. And that's not very good for the country, because, and that's why you see most estates in Abuja aligned without
Mr. David,
anybody occupying them.
There's a quick question here for you. There's a quick question here for you, and this is from one of our very strong viewers. He's saying that, is it just that we're hearing it, or our leaders are really trying to bring this money back home, or is it just like, you know, normally what we hear and, you know, they're saying it, but they're not trying to really do it? And he's also asking that, should citizens hold, you know, government officials accountable when we see this happening? Because at the end of the day, you know, when this illicit money is taken, it's stifling the growth of the economy. So is it high time for citizens to now hold these government officials accountable? This is from our very strong viewer, not for me. If it's a punchy question, it's not for me, but he is saying that, is it just the things that we hear and are not put into implementation? Are they really trying to bring the money home?
Yes, you know, that's another thing again I need to really to address here. Yeah. Because of the situation we find ourselves in the country, Nigerian citizens are very cynical. They're cynical because they don't trust government. They don't trust what government is saying. And that's some of the things that we're also raising before the government. Government must create an enabling environment to build trust. Government must put in place system that will make the citizen to trust them. By that way, it increases the opportunity for government policies to be felt by the people. So, yes, it is true that government is making effort. As a matter of fact, Nigeria is one of the leading countries around the world that is really achieving tangible results in terms of asset recovery. For example, just the recent one was Desiani's recovered asset from the United States, which was about $52-point-something million, which is not going to be used in rural electrification project across Nigeria, which we are also planning to monitor. So, and I've mentioned that of Abacha. I've mentioned other several cases. You have seen the case of Alamesia in Bayelsa State, which was recovered from the United States. It was about $1 million. Absolutely. And so these are evidence to demonstrate that government is actually returning some money back to the country.
That's right. And it's very good that, you know, when you mention Abacha, that they say is our forefather now that is now sending us money from, you know, his grave, you know, and so on and so forth. But then, thank you very much for your keenness for the keenness of your insights into, you know, this very important topic, the African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEJ, the Executive Director, David Ugwala. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, guys, before we actually hand over to Abuja, you know, this is a very, very crucial topic. Very important topic. Especially when we have Nigerians saying we are facing economic challenges, and then you have people not just taking this money or monies into their own private pocket or private purse. They are also using these monies to degrade this country in terms of sponsoring terrorism and so on and so forth, that will now turn back to make Nigeria, you know, turn it upside down or face on his head.
You know, he talked about wealth that is not commensurate with our sources of income. So when you gather that kind of money, you are a little bit afraid to spend it here in Nigeria because maybe one or two people will ask questions. So you try as much as you can to repatriate these monies outside the country where you have the leeway to spend it the way you want. It is so unfortunate because by doing that, you are benefiting the economy of those countries as against yours.
And Ria, before you come in, and you know, some of these countries, look at the US, look at the UK, look at France, etc. They will now come and moralize on us that you guys have bad leaders, you have corrupt leaders, whereas these monies are going into their bank accounts.
That's why I asked him that question. At the end of the day, it's human beings that are doing it. It's not spirits. It's human beings that are taking this money illicitly out of the country. I like the question that says that, you know, are they trying to bring this money back home? And if they bring it back home, what are they doing with the money? Because at the end of the day, I feel like we as citizens, we need to hold these people accountable because the more this money goes out, the more you're stifling the economy, the more the infrastructure is bad, the more there is food security. So I feel it's high time we start asking questions. And if you are a politician or you're a big figure and you have the amount of money and you're not thinking about making Nigeria better, you're rather thinking about hiding it, that means it's questionable. The money itself is questionable.
Absolutely, and then we need to very much collaborate with countries like the UAE, like you know, Egypt, like the Japan that we have, and all of these other countries that, you know, are having very strong system. Because one thing that we are lacking in this country is systems. We do not have, you know, credible system to, you know, tackle this financial. I love what is going on right now by the FRS, particularly in collaboration with the CBN, customs, etc. They are doing so well in terms of tackling illicit financial flow. But then we need to raise on.